the big thing is figuring out how you sell tickets. That's what everyone wants to figure out. How do we sell tickets to this? Now you can do some PR. And one of the things that we have found is that the artists that slow down, so for the stuff that especially they're not getting paid for, or things that are part of their Patreon, or things that are doing those as far as entertainment, gets back to exactly what we talked about before, is that interactivity turns out to be the big, it's it is the holy grail, is how do you talk to them? And so artists who can't play a 2-hour show every Saturday, because if you do that, people have already seen it. You did a show from your house, great, and trying to get them to come every single time is harder.
Yeah.
But if you play a song every half hour and talk about the song and answer questions and interact with your audience, you end up with an audience that's much more likely to come back to the next one, because they're really they were engaged again. They were brought to the front row. We also are seeing more and more shows where we take the audience completely out of the. I'm working on a concert stage right now, and there's no space for the audience. like there's no, the audience.
Yeah, screw them, man. Who needs them?
The audience, the online audience is the audience, right? And
Right.
So the thing is and when you start talking about that kind of conversation, when you start talking about that with bands, the only thing that comes out of their mouth, and I mean to a band, is, when do I get to stop touring? Like, I know that they say that they love to tour, and they tell you how great it is to be here.
It's a great
but they don't,
way
money.
to make incremental revenue. And I think
it's
we have
it's not incremental. Like if you get it working, it's way more than the tour,
Exactly.
And so that's what they're all looking at. And so all the bands, all the music artists that are out there, this is like an untapped little thing. And as soon as we figure out how they make the kind of money they're making with tours, they'll do 10 or 12 cities.
So there's checkouttogether.com. I had Mark DiLorenzo on a panel we did last year. He's got an amazing roster of musicians who perform live from their studios, and they've got a community of people who ask questions. And it's the number 2 GTHR together. Check it out. And obviously, one of the great gifts of the pandemic was that ain't nobody could go nowhere. So, Richard Thompson, who lives in my town, Montclair, New Jersey, was doing these conversations, and Elvis Costello and Lyle Lovett were doing these things. And one Elvis was interviewing Richard, and Richard's battery ran out on his laptop, and he had to run downstairs, and it showed that he was barefoot and in shorts, and it was hilarious. And that's just priceless. And I think that's the engagement, coming back to what Alex is saying, that we all love. And now we're learning some more tips and tricks. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I think, Chris, something that keeps popping back up in my mind, and I'm sorry I stumbled a little earlier in your question, because I kept thinking, a lot of artists we weren't working with directly because they were just doing it themselves, right? And so, like, I think of like David Foster on Instagram, every morning with his new wife, who's an amazing singer, and they're doing Instagram Live. They're bringing in their friends, right? And they're interacting from that, but it's just all from their phone. It's pretty damn good. It's entertaining, and they can bring in, one of David's favorite people, and just, hey, how's it going, Michael Bublé? Did you like that song? Let me try this in a different key. And they did that every day, almost every day of the pandemic. And then it kind of slowed down. But, I see a lot of artists kind of doing those one-on-one kind of experiences, but I would love to see that from a big stage presentation style.
Yeah, and we've done a couple of them from pretty big stages, and they look great. But the funny thing that we find is that we don't know how many cameras we really need, because as you start to do them, you kind of feel like you just want to be there. You want a camera that's kind of framed everybody, and I get to sit there and watch it. What we found is that if I'm on a big screen, like a theater screen, I kind of want to see the whole body. But if I'm at home, I kind of want to see a little lower than waist up. It's like the same size as me. Like I'm looking through a little window, then they're there. And so we play a lot with those camera angles, but we find that that's there. And that what's incredible is, what most people don't know is, like, YouTube Live now does HDR, and does HDR10 and 5.1, to live, and so there's a lot of things that artists a lot of artists can ramp this up to a different level. We're doing a lot of R&D with HDR10 and 5.1 to YouTube right now. And it's,
but what do you find? Only one channel of audio and one channel of captions. Come on, guys. Come on, YouTube.